While shark attacks are extremely rare, every now and again humans come into contact with these dangerous sea creatures. Surfers, beachgoers, and boaters are sometimes the victims of terrifying attacks. Today we're taking a look at 15 close encounters with sharks. Number 15. The Lucky Diver. While plenty of people have close encounters with sharks, this lucky diver was lucky to not lose his head. That's because as he was diving for sea snails off the coast of South Africa, a great white shark approached him with a wide mouth, hoping to snap off his head as a tasty snack. Miraculously, the diver managed to duck just in time, avoiding the shark's mouth and resurfacing to safety before the shark could lunge at him any further. However, the jury's still out on whether or not he went diving for sea snails ever again. Number 14. Terrence Manuel. Australia is known for having a lot of sharks, and on January 9th of 1974, a 26-year-old man by the name of Terrence Manuel became a victim of a gruesome attack. He had been diving for sea snails with his friend John Talbot at a depth of about 9 meters, when out of nowhere, a 3-meter-long white pointer ripped off Terrence's right leg. Talbot then immediately swam over to try to save his friend and bring him back to safety, but it was too late. By the time Manuel was back at the boat, he had succumbed to his injuries. Number 13. Dave Martin. Triathlon athletes are some of the strongest people around, but unfortunately an elite athlete by the name of Dave Martin met his demise while out training. He had been a dedicated competitor who used to train every Friday off the coast of Solana Beach in San Diego County, California, with a group of other triathletes. However, while the group had gone 6 years without an incident, on April 25th of 2008, Martin was attacked by a great white shark. It made a massive cut across his leg, and even though his fellow athletes immediately came to his aid to swim him to shore, by the time he arrived on the beach it was too late, as despite the best efforts of the lifeguard on duty, he soon passed away. Number 12. Anila Govea. Sometimes even little kids are the subject of shark encounters, as was the case with a 6-year-old girl by the name of Anila Govea. She had been playing in the water off the coast of Oahu on Sunday, May 2nd of 2021. As her mother filmed her, she had a shark swim up to her. While it's not clear whether or not the shark saw Anila as its next meal, it began to thrash around her, and somehow her mother managed to film the entire thing with a steady camera rather than go out to try to save her daughter. Regardless, Anila ran out of the surf just in time and sustained no injuries from the incident. Number 11. The Shark Spearman. While many people like to go out for a day of fishing, this spearfisher had an encounter of a lifetime when he came face to face with a great white shark. Joe Petrovich and some friends were diving off the coast of Perth, Australia, when on September 7th of 2019, Joe was forced to fight for his life. That's because as the group went spearfishing, Joe had strayed about 300 meters away from the boat in an attempt to hunt down a school of pink snapper. But soon afterwards, a 4.5-meter-long shark weighing approximately 400 kilograms appeared, making Joe go from predator to prey in a matter of seconds. The shark began to circle Joe in order to assess his weaknesses, and over a 9-minute-long ordeal repeatedly lunged at him, with Joe managing to ward off the shark each time with the help of his spear. Therefore, while Joe eventually managed to get away, had he not had the spear in his hand, the encounter would have been likely a whole lot different. Number 10. Randy Fry. Shark attacks are known to be gruesome, but few quite match the one suffered by Randy Fry. A resident of California, on August 15th of 2004, he and his buddy Cliff Zimmerman were freediving off the coast of Fort Bragg when disaster struck. That's because after momentarily turning away from Fry, Zimmerman heard a whooshing sound and felt a wave similar to that of a boat. When he looked back, he saw blood everywhere. Zimmerman swam for his life and made it back to the boat, but it was too late for Fry, who had died almost instantly, with his torn body being found the following day. Now, the strange thing about this attack is that it was completely out of character, as the beach where the attack had occurred had never been the site of a shark observation in the past. Regardless, Randy Fry's demise will go down in history as an especially brutal attack. Number 9. Shirley Ann Durden. A shark attack is brutal enough when someone suffers it alone, but the children of Shirley Ann Durden had to witness the horrible scene of their mother getting not just bitten, but devoured by a shark. The incident occurred on March 4th of 1985 as 33-year-old mother of 4 Shirley was snorkeling for scallops along with her husband and a friend of theirs. As they were making their way back to shore after a long period of scallop hunting, Shirley was savagely attacked by a shark, which, according to witnesses, measured in at a length of about 6 meters. At first, the shark simply bit off her bottom torso, but as fishermen rushed over to retrieve the second half of her body, the shark took that too, therefore devouring her whole body as both her husband and children watched nearby. Given that her family was forced to watch this terrible incident, we'd say the death of Shirley Ann Durden was one of the worst shark attacks ever. We're constantly adding more people to the Top 5's production team to bring you all the best content. Be sure to subscribe with notifications on and hit the like button. Number 8. Robert Pampron. Of all the shark attacks on this list, few are quite as mysterious as the attack on Robert Pampron. You see, he'd been diving for sea snails with his friend Gerald Lehrer on June 14th of 1959 off the coast of La Jolla Cave in California when Lehrer heard a scream for help. As Lehrer swam to his friend to try to assist him, he saw that Pampron was missing his mask, upright and unnaturally high in the water, and it wasn't long until a 6.7-meter-long shark began pulling Pampron into the depths of the sea. In the next few days, divers from all over the area began to search for both the remains of Pampron and signs of the man-eating shark, using both skin and scuba diving equipment in their endeavor. After a couple of days, the fishermen on the boat Cha-Cha reported they saw a large shark off the Mission Bay Channel entrance, so state game wardens began hunting the beast by trailing cattle blood in the water. However, it was to no avail, and it was only a few days after the attack, after all their searching, a single swim fin bearing shark teeth marks washed ashore on La Jolla Shores Beach. To this day, it has been the only recovered remnant of Robert Pampron's body. Number 7. Patrick Brinney. Deep-sea fishing is a sport enjoyed by many, but on December 2nd of 2013, 57-year-old Patrick Brinney of Stevenson, Washington, became an unfortunate statistic when he became the first kayaker to ever die from a shark attack. Brinney had been fishing in a kayak about 1.5 kilometers off the coast of Makena Beach in Hawaii with a friend when disaster struck. They were fishing a few hundred meters apart, but could still see each other when, as Brinney was fishing with an artificial lure, he made the mistake of letting his foot rest in the water. Despite being an experienced angler, he didn't realize that this made his foot a piece of bait for an even larger type of fish, and soon a bull shark came and completely ripped it off. Brinney's friend then tried to stop the bleeding by applying a tourniquet, and after flagging down a nearby tour boat, Brinney was rushed to the mainland. However, it was too late, as Brinney died on the journey to the hospital. We think this story proves that it's probably best to keep your body inside your boat if you ever go fishing. Number 6. Brooke Watson. While we're sure that there's been plenty of undocumented shark attacks since the dawn of time, the first to make it into the history books was Brooke Watson, as he holds the title of being the first recorded victim of a shark attack. Born in England in 1735, he was an orphan by age 6 and soon found work as a sailor on a ship. This sequence of events had led him to Havana, Cuba, where on a fateful day in 1749, a 14-year-old Watson decided to beat the heat by swimming in the harbor alone. This ended up being a pretty bad idea, as it wasn't long until he was being chewed up by a shark. The shark managed to bite Watson twice, removing the flesh from below the calf of Watson's right leg on the first bite and completely biting off his right foot at the ankle on the second bite. Thankfully, at this point, Watson was rescued by his shipmates, but after a close examination, his leg had to be amputated below the knee. As a result, Watson spent 3 months in a Cuban hospital. Yet once released, he didn't let this amputated leg stop him. That's because despite his disability, he went on to live a fascinating life, serving as an officer in the Canadian Army, a merchant in London, a director of the Bank of England, the chairman of Lloyd's of London, the Lord Mayor of London, a member of Parliament, and eventually a baronet. So we guess that Watson just goes to show that even the victim of a debilitating shark attack can live on the wild side. Number 5. The Kite Surfer. Divers are the types of people who are most commonly caught up in shark attacks, but on February 3rd of 2010, a 38-year-old kite surfer by the name of Stephen Schaefer had the misfortune of falling victim to a killer shark. He had been surfing about 460 meters off the shore of Stewart Beach in Florida when a lifeguard noticed that Schaefer was lying on his surfboard in a bloody heap. After the lifeguard paddled over to Schaefer, Schaefer told him he had been bitten by a shark, yet despite the lifeguard bringing him back to shore, the paramedics were not able to save him. Upon further investigation, it was found that the shark had taken a bite out of his buttocks and right thigh, with a further injury being sustained on his hand that was likely incurred as he tried to fight off the shark. Experts believe that either a tiger shark or a bull shark was to blame, with the size of the wounds indicating that the shark likely came in at anywhere from 2.5 to 2.7 meters in length. However, what distinguishes this shark from most others is that it was likely trying to kill Schaefer rather than just injure him. After all, in the majority of shark cases, a shark will bite and run, as they will usually bite a human and then swim away after realizing that it's not a seal or other tasty animal. However, given that the shark actually ate a chunk out of the victim, the shark likely saw Schaefer as a snack. And in any case, despite the shark attack, a large group of surfers paddled out to the site of the shark bite a few days later in recognition of their fallen friend. Number 4. Rodney Fox. As far as frightening fears go, nothing quite matches the story of Rodney Fox. Hailing from Adelaide, Australia, the 23-year-old had been competing at the South Australia Spearfishing Championship at Aldinga Beach when on December 8th of 1963, he was attacked by a great white shark. The story goes that as he was fishing, the shark had grabbed his torso and dragged him deep into the water. While he managed to escape, he had been rushed to hospital. Once there, it was clear that he was in pretty bad shape. After all, not only had he sustained a punctured left lung, diaphragm, and clavicle, but all of his ribs on his left side were broken, had his scapula pierced, and his spleen uncovered. One of his arteries was exposed, multiple parts of his body was cut, and reportedly he was minutes away from his veins collapsing due to the loss of large amounts of blood. However, after being patched up with a total of 462 stitches, he ultimately survived the encounter, and to this day he still has several scars and a shark tooth embedded in his right wrist. Now, most people would have expected a man like Fox to stay away from sharks forever. After all, he's often credited with surviving the most severe non-lethal shark attack in human history. Yet rather than succumb to fear, he dove headfirst into the world of sharks. More specifically, he invented the world's first underwater observation cage so that people could swim with great white sharks. And for over 40 years, he's led expeditions to seek out incredible creatures. To top this off, he even founded the Fox Shark Research Foundation, and Fox is now one of the world's foremost experts on great whites. Therefore, while Rodney Fox may have suffered the unthinkable, we think that he came out stronger on the other side. Number 3. The Jersey Shore Shark Attacks. Jersey Shore isn't exactly known for having tons of shark attacks, but for a period of 12 days between July 1st and 12th of 1916, 4 people were killed and 1 injured during a slew of shark attacks. For reference, the summer of 1916 was rough for people in the United States, as much of the country was suffering from a deadly summer heat wave and a polio epidemic. Therefore, vacationers flocked to Jersey Shore to beat the heat and forget about their troubles. This throng of people likely attracted sharks to the area, with a great white shark and the bull shark likely being the key culprits in the attacks. The first victim in the attacks was Charles Epting Van Zandt, a 28-year-old from Philadelphia. He had decided to take a quick swim in the Atlantic when out of nowhere a shark began biting his legs to the point that Van Zandt's left thigh was stripped of its flesh. Unfortunately, he bled to death on the manager's desk of the Ingleside Hotel before a medical team could arrive. The second major attack occurred 5 days later when a Swiss Bell captain by the name of Charles Bruder bit him in the abdomen and severed his legs. Unfortunately, he died as a lifeguard canoed him back to shore. The next 2 attacks occurred at Matawan Creek, killing both 11-year-old Lester Stillwell and a 24-year-old businessman by the name of Watson Stanley Fisher, who tried to save him. Finally, the attack stopped after 14-year-old Joseph Dunn got bit, with him being the luckiest of the 5 victims, as he was the only one to survive. As you might expect, these attacks inspired a flurry of outrage, and over the next few months a push was made to kill all of the area's supposedly man-eating sharks, while also creating devices to protect the general public. However, unlike many fear-based fads, the fear of sharks would forever remain in the American consciousness, and from that point on, these beautiful creatures were seen by many as deadly killers. Number 2. The Double Team. While sharks often attack swimmers in a solo manner, a diver that featured on National Geographic Shark Week had things happen a little differently to him. You see, diver Chris Fallows had been deep underwater off the coast of New Zealand when a shark began to swim to him. However, what he didn't realize is that directly behind him, a 3.7-meter-long male was fast approaching. Despite calls from his fellow divers to watch out, Chris barely ducked away in time, with the shark opening its mouth less than a meter away from his head before swimming off. And while it's unclear as to whether the 2 sharks were working together, what is clear is that this incident certainly was a close call. What's interesting about this encounter is that it also showcases the differences between sharks in different locations. You see, Chris is an expert on shark behaviors, and after the incident he noted that while two sharks that had circled him were very comfortable being in close proximity to each other, this would have not been the case in the waters of his home country of South Africa, where the sharks tend to swim very far apart from each other. This is because just like humans, sharks have different customs and cultures depending on where they live, with at least 5 distinct shark cultures being known to exist, these including the Pacific Northeast population, the Atlantic Northwest population, the Mediterranean population, the South African population, and the Australia and New Zealand population. Therefore, we think it's fair to say that this type of attack may not be able to occur in other parts of the planet. Number 1. The USS Indianapolis. While there have been several shark attacks over the years, none were nearly as deadly as the one suffered by the USS Indianapolis. It was an American heavy cruiser that served during the Second World War, and if all had gone as planned, it would have met the battleship USS Idaho in the Leyte Gulf in the Philippines to prepare for an invasion of Japan. However, on July 30th of 1945, that idea was sealed shut when 2 Japanese torpedoes hit the ship's starboard bow and midship area, causing massive explosions and effectively splitting the ship in two. As such, it only took 12 minutes for the ship to sink, but miraculously 900 out of the 1,196 that had been on board had survived. However, for some reason or another, the Navy did not send anyone to rescue the ship, and so for 3 whole days men lay adrift. While this would have been hard enough in regular conditions, there was an added bonus in that a swarm of oceanic whitetips had heard the commotion of the sinking ship and smelt the blood of the drowning sailors. As such, they started to pick off the sailors one by one, first going for those who were sick or who had open wounds, before slowly targeting even those who were healthy. In order to defend themselves, the men began to form into groups, and whenever a man would begin to hallucinate or otherwise become weak, they would be pushed out to the sharks for fear that in their dying stupor, they would either attract the sharks or drag other men down with him. Thus, by the time they were all rescued on August 2nd, only 316 of the 900 men who had been emptied into the Pacific were left alive. And when you consider that anywhere from a few dozen to 150 men directly died thanks to the sharks, it becomes clear that these creatures certainly played a major role in that disaster. Watch our scary playlist for more top 15 videos about the most scary subjects. Sit back, relax, and binge watch all of our best videos.